Congress would not allow it. The people themselves. The Second Amendment, the interesting thing about the United States also, you have to look another angle. The Second Amendment gives them the right to bear arms because this was the only way they were able to repel the British colonial forces. You know, so the whole idea of the right to bear arms in the United States is to raise an ever-ready militia. So even the military cannot even come on the streets because almost everybody is armed and they can defend their country and defend their constitution. So I think, the only way out for African countries is to have a strong democracy and deepen the institutions. I know the question would be, how do you do this when this particular family is trying to hijack um, the whole country and stay for like 59 years and all that? But the members of parliament are not members of this family, of the Bongo family. The members of parliament changed the law to even allow the president to run for a third time. The members of parliament are supposed to be the direct representatives of the people. Parliament sold out the people of Gabon. We have to look at things like that as well. The choice of people who end up as our voices and representatives at the parliament, because what happened in Gabon could not have gone ahead without the collusion of the politicians.
Hmm. Well said. Now, in a country like Niger, what do you call it, where in a situation where the ECOWAS is still battling with Niger Republic, what do you say? This has moved on to Central Africa now, in Gabon. What's going to happen? What do you think should be the position of the African Union? Don't you think the attention of the African Union and all of the confederations in Africa would be really distracted? Because are you going to be talking about Burkina Faso? Are you talking about Mali? Are you talking about Niger Republic? Or now you're going to be talking about Gabon? What is it? Doesn't this take away from, especially like a country like Nigeria, where we're dealing with a lot? They said there's a lot of insecurity in Nigeria. There's poverty, there's hunger in the land, and our president has to, be a part of all of these conversations on the African continent. Doesn't that take away from governance in our country, Nigeria?
Well, the president begged for the job. He applied for the job, and he said it has been his lifelong ambition to be president. So that's what he signed up for. And when people were even exercising their concerns about his health and everything, he said, well, the president's job is not the job of a laborer, it's to think. So we need him now to rise to the occasion. It's not all about talk now, it's about action. As regards the AU's stance, would be their stance in Gabon, I presume that their stance would be the same stance as they adopted on Niger. If they had slept on the wheel and allowed what happened in Mali, in Burkina Faso, etc., to have occurred without, a strong worded or response or backing it up with the necessary international intervention, that has changed with Niger because the ECOWAS has come out strongly and the AU as well put ECOWAS on its toes because it seemed as if the AU was the first to become very proactive and ECOWAS was forced to issue the declarations which they did. Now, there's another one, and AU, I presume, my presumption is that they would even speak and condemn this more loudly than what they did in Niger, and they have an opportunity now to say, hey, this is what we're talking about. You saw what happened in Niger, it's now gone to Gabon. This thing is spreading. We need to rise to the occasion. I suspect that will be the position of the African Union.
Well, let's talk about the poverty on the continent. A country like Gabon, just about less than 2.5 million people, naturally blessed with gold, diamond, uranium, and the likes. And people say, look, Gabon should be one of the countries in Africa, richest countries, with great per capita income, considering the population and size of that country. Side by side, the resources available in that country. Do you think that there is some stronghold against African countries and their prosperity, especially when people talk about neocolonialism and all of that? How do you think that Africa can break away from this?
Well, Gabon is the fifth largest producer of oil, and the oil does not directly, translate into prosperity in the lives of the people. They're the fifth largest producer of oil in Africa.
Absolutely.
But the problem there in in Africa generally, not just in Gabon, you can say Nigeria, you can say uh, anywhere else in Africa, you can say South Africa, is that our people who end up in governance, they don't really like us. They don't really like us. It's all about interest and selfish reasons. And I'll give you an example. With the elections that happened here, for the first time, there was some sort of credible third party, so to speak, because from the Babangida years,
It seems like we lost connection with my guest. We're going to try to reconnect with him. What could have happened? Wondering. Seems like the network did us in. Let's try to reconnect with my guest. The situation in Africa getting out of hand, if you ask me. A situation where, democratic and civilian rule is truncated. I think we have my guest back. Sorry, Mr. Kola. I think we lost connection there for a bit.
So as I was saying, for the first time, we had a credible third party in Nigeria, which was like the Labour Party. And, the whole idea that people wanted a change, they expected, to see our politicians speaking more for us. Now they've gone into the National Assembly and look at the national shame and embarrassment. The National Assembly have always tried to hide their allowances. What they publish out there for you to see, or they keep saying, these are salaries, it was set by the Revenue and Fiscal, whatever, Commission, RMA, whatever it's called. But you now have a new crop of politicians who have gone in there, who have promised to work for the people, who ruled on the popularity of change and what the people wanted. They wanted a credible voice. They are also accepting this largesse. They've not rejected it. I would have expected the new ones who came in with lofty ideas and everything, with a different party ideology, to say we are not going to be part of this. The people on the streets are suffering. We reject these allowances. Have you heard any of these newbies who have come in under the new party? For the first time, the demography of party politics has really changed in Nigeria. The National Assembly is having more variety in the candidature. But even the new people who have come in have not spoken. They've not come out to reject it, to say we don't want this. So we don't really like ourselves. When you find what it means, the narrative, what we can deduce from the narrative is when you are not in power or you're not having a share of this national cake, you grumble, you shout and everything. But once they start stuffing your mouth with the cake, you're unable to shout out again. So people who have ended up in politics are not really working in our interest. The percentage of people who are working in the interest of the country is very minimal. And it's so minimal that a change seems not to be able to be effective.
I'm going to take you up on something you mentioned earlier about the opposition and what it is that opposition needs to be doing. Just yesterday, we saw the opposition NNPP, which has a number of members in the House of Representatives, has a state governor. Seems like there's a big fraction in that party now, with some members of the party suspending the flag bearer, the presidential flag bearer of the party, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, senator, and he's on the neck as well, also going ahead to say they suspended or expelled the BOT and some of the members of the party, the founder of the party, and some BOT members. What do you make of opposition politics in this country? Also, I'm just going to throw this in. We have a situation where the minister of the FCT is a member of the PDP and serving in the cabinet of the APC. Just yesterday there was reports of his name appearing in the campaign list for the APC and PDP in Bayelsa State, and people are wondering what kind of politics we play in this country.
Well, I just told you the politics we play here is the politics of stomach infrastructure, and it has been said by a former governor and said stomach infrastructure is what our people know, and that is why we will keep on voting the wrong people into power, for a few crumbs of bread. So what you saw with the NNPP, as you said, is whatever is going on there. Eventually, you can trace it down to the sharing of resources, who gets what and this and that, and that is why they've splintered. They've gone into splinter groups. In the case of Nyesom Wike, I think he's an asset. We saw what he did in River State. His people love him. They call him Mr. Projects. And that is why the president himself tapped upon him to say, hey, come and do this for us in the FCT. So in Wike's case, which is bizarre, I think PDP are still trying to hold on to him because he's an electoral asset. And the APC government, which he is serving, is also probably trying to woo him and force him into the APC. In any case, we don't really know where his position would be now, because he's always said, I will be in the PDP. And he also said, I would not take any ministerial position. I will not take any job from this APC government. And he has. So, we wouldn't really know which way the pendulum will swing with the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike.
So much for integrity and loyalty, you would say. Now, coming down to...
In politics, when you talk about integrity and loyalty, you have to remember that there are no permanent friends or foes. They're only permanent interests.
Now, okay, let's come down to, the masses, the people in general. 2 days ago, there was this heartbreaking, video emerging on social media where, food items that were saved up in the store, got bad, and they're bringing them out, clearing up the store to restock them with new palliatives sent from the federal government. And people were wondering why it is that we would have all of these foods that were supposed to go to flood victims last year in Bayelsa State. This year, there's another flood coming around. We're stocking up, the storehouses, the warehouses, and people are dying of hunger and all. Bringing that to talk about the policies of government as regards the people. At what point would the people begin to enjoy the dividends of democracy as regards the kinds of policies that government makes? This administration started off, with the removal of fuel subsidy and even subsidies on foreign exchange and all. And people have said these policies are anti-masses as it is. Democracy uninterrupted about 24 years in this country. At what point would Nigerians begin to enjoy the dividends of democracy?
Well, that is the big question that you have posed, the million-dollar question. I think there are no bad leaders. There are only bad followers. And it has to start from having credible elections. Once we're able to have credible elections and put the right people in place, people who work in our interest, it was shameful to experience the last election. It was shameful in the sense that, Professor Yakubu had promised, as we're voting, we're going to be uploading this to the server. He gave assurances. IRF days, all sorts of terminologies came up, and then the election day came, and all these systems that were put in place refused to work. An election that cost hundreds of billions was shocking, and he just, tried to downplay the effects of what he has just done. So much money just went down the drain, and that got people really disinterested and feel disenfranchised. For the first time in recent political history, we now have a president who INEC has declared to have won the election. But when you look at the demographics of how he won the election, he actually has more votes against him than what he had to win. The implication is, if the two runner-up parties had been together, then it probably may have meant that the president would not have emerged. So what you have, he has emerged as president, but the voices in opposition, people who voted against him, when you compare the votes and you add them together, the votes of Labour Party and the PDP, they are more than the votes votes that brought in the president. So we've ended up with a bitterly split country, and this has not happened in recent times. So until we start having the right people in place, credible elections that can bring in the right people, you are not going to get it, in quotes, dividends of democracy, because the wrong people have been let into power, into government. And that's why, why on earth would some people lock up the food? We saw it also during COVID, or shortly after COVID, where people grew so hungry and they started raiding this this shelter. So we need to really know what happened. Are they storing it up for the time when there will be, a proper need for it or something? Are the people who stored these things up, have they faced the music? Have they been charged to court? Because by the time you charge them to court and we're able to find out the real reasons and they start pointing fingers, we would not really know what's going on. Even if they say, oh, the governor told us to lock it up, we know the governor has constitutional immunity. But what about the people who actually created this mess? Has anybody been made to face music? So we're not serious in our country. We'll talk about this and it will all blow away, just like every other scandal has blown away. That's what will happen.
Earlier you mentioned institutions and strengthening of institutions and all, and you also just cited the INEC and the 2023 elections, and how many people have said some of these are blamed, the Nigerian elections for some of this, the coups in Africa. They say, look, a lot of the people, a lot of these countries were looking up to Nigeria, and the way that the 2023 elections went made them give up hope on elections in the continent, and that's why some of these coups are happening. Some people are saying right now that, well, as it is, the hope of Nigeria and Africans lies with the Nigerian judiciary. They're saying they're looking up to the judiciary to maybe redeem the African continent. And as a member of the minister in the Temple of Justice, how do you see such assertions?
Well, there's no doubt that Nigeria is a big player on the African continent. We also have strong players, maybe not as big as Nigeria, who have redeemed themselves. Kenya did conduct elections. At some point in time, they were violent, but they were able to, get back on the right path. So we can look to other democracies that have been able to reinvent themselves. The South African democracy is there as well. It's not perfect, but at least they have democratic rule, and I don't think the military will ever dare to take over power in South Africa after what they had passed through with the apartheid regime. The Nigerian judiciary has its job clearly cut out. This is not a time to be issuing bizarre judgments or technical justice is being done, winners coming on technicality. And I do know that my lords, in their wisdom, they are also human beings and they can feel the pulse of the people on the street. Let us hope that justice will be done, even though the heavens fall.
That's a big one. Now, let's bring in some of the callers. They've been listening, and so some of you have been itching to join the conversation. Feel free to join in now. 09073530044 and 09087668888. That is 09073530044 and 09087668888. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Renato. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jackson on the line.
I didn't get your name. Say again.
Jackson on the line.
Oh, Mr. Jackson, good to have you.
The guests have touched in a very every area that we spoke. I so much enjoyed it. Then I want to just put two things. When we say African leader or African Union leader, who are the Union leaders? Either ex-president or ex-this or ex-that. They are the people that form this African Union. So when some of these presidents are making thoughts and or changing the constitution, some of them did it, or even though they did not do it, I don't believe that, yes, a constitution of a country being written for years, somebody is going to tap it because he wants to be in power. Then on the Omar Bongo of a family, if they have other legislators that form the government, he is the leader of the government. Whatever he says stands. That's why for 9 years they have been ruling. You come, you go, whatever you get is your own. It doesn't supposed to work that way. That's why they say prevention is better than cure. You call your people together. This is why would they allow amendment of constitution? We keep on going on and going on and going on. So that's one issue. All the other issue here. So we allow things to happen before we start to take precaution or prevention. It doesn't supposed to work when we say ECOWAS. Who is ECOWAS? They are former governors or former presidents or former ambassadors. They are the people that look at Ouattara. Ouattara, I know how he started with the other man before he entered. He gave a person that imagine 40 years as a president doing what? And there is no change. And you keep on. That is, okay, imagine the same army people that is taking over now. He's the one protecting them before. But they have taken it so long. Yes, it is the military that back them. It's not backing them or supporting them. Back them in terms of security and other things. So when it's now against the people in tax out, let's understand ourselves that we are the cause of our problem from top to bottom. Because we elected them. Okay, look at what he just said. If you put the vote of those people, PDP, a Labour Party, it's bigger than the APC. This is what the people want. Irrespective is single in terms of party. But the majority of people does not want APC in terms of Nigeria. That's why they get lesser vote. If you join all the whole vote, but what we have, we don't vote wrong people. The people that chooses to be there is the people that has been there for a very long time. No individual is indispensable.
Right,
and
Mr.
no
Jackson.
individual is bigger than the community or the country.
Well
It's not that it has become a system and they are doing it. That's why you see ourselves here. What of immunity? What do you mean by immunity? A governor has immunity. Is it not somebody that wrote the constitution or the law that makes him have an immunity? But when he's within us, he doesn't have that immunity. So we should rethink
Thank you very
and
much.
know how to put
Thank
it
you.
in order.
Thank you so much for calling. Appreciate you calling. Mr. Alakpani, let's talk about, the judiciary some more. I'd love us to mention that just over the weekend, there was the, I think it's still on, the NBA conference, and the president was there and mentioned that, the welfare of judicial officers will be taken care of and all. Many Nigerians are wondering why it is that the judiciary, which is supposed to be an arm of government on its own, seems to be subservient to the executive and sometimes even the legislative arm of government. At what point would we gain complete independence of the judiciary, that they're able to sell themselves out and take care of themselves, unlike the situation that we have now, where it seems like they're managed by the executive. Whatever the executive gives is what they take.
Well, there are three arms of government in Nigeria. You have the executive, you have the legislature, and you have the judiciary. Out of these three arms of government, the judiciary is the only one that has career public servants. They are public servants from day one, and that's what they do till they retire. Unfortunately, judges are meant to be seen, not heard. The time when you hear about judges is when you read their judgment. They live a very sober life, and they dictate how the society functions through their judgments. Out of these two arms of government, these three arms of government, the other two are very fearful of the judiciary, because the judiciary is the one that can disqualify them from office. So it seems as if there's a deliberate attempt to have a stranglehold on the judiciary. Otherwise, the legislature, whether rightly or wrongly, puts up a budget of like 150 billion. The executive puts up their budget, and they make the judiciary almost run to them, cup in hand. Our judges are poorly paid. We start look. You get to some courtrooms in Nigeria, and you'll be wondering, is this really a court? The roofs are leaking. Everywhere is not conducive. The ACs are not working, and judges sit down on the bench writing judgments day in, day out, month in, month out for years. By the time you've been writing almost on a daily basis for 35 years and you are leaving, there's not much left into you anymore to enjoy your life. So we need a system where the judiciary is not made to go to the executive or go to the legislature, equal funding for the three different arms of government, and that way we can create a very strong institution in the judiciary. But the politicians know that the judiciary is the albatross. They're the ones who can sack them from office and all. So I think it's a deliberate attempt for the judiciary not to be as strong as we would like them to be. So it has to be revisited. They keep saying it every time. Oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. The judiciary should not be living at the mercy of the executive and the legislature. The legislature we have in Nigeria had more bite because if you remember when we returned to democracy in 1999, the legislature was having skirmishes with the executive. We had a strong president who was a former military leader, and he tried to stifle the legislature. But under Chuba Okadibo, they really fought for themselves and asserted their independence because Chuba Okadibo was very knowledgeable in political affairs. He was a scholar of political affairs. But unfortunately, the legislature itself now has become a Frankenstein monster because they single-handedly rewrote the law and give themselves bumper allowances and bumper salaries. That what goes on in the National Assembly now, if not checked, we're not going to be able to survive as a country with the amount of money that is leaking. And everybody keeps telling the ordinary man on the street, oh, please bear with us, we're trying to